origin, significance, and observance. Please note that the word Sunday is not mentioned in the Bible at all, but there are 8 New Testament texts that mention the first day. Let us look at them briefly for evidence of Sunday worship or holiness. The Christian world has for some time observed 2 different days. On one hand, most Christians sincerely observe Sunday, the first day of the week, which they believe to be a memorial of Christ's resurrection. On the other hand, a large group of Christians, equally sincere, believe that the Bible recognizes only the 7th day as the Sabbath and nowhere affirms the sanctity of Sunday. Does it make any difference which day we observe as the Sabbath? As sincere people who want to know the truth, we must always ask ourselves, what matters to Jesus? What does Jesus want me to do? After all, we want the assurance of following Bible's truth and obeying God's instruction when He says, "This is the way, walk in it." Isaiah 30:21, NIV. Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, "This is the way, walk in it." This verse emphasizes God's guidance and direction in our lives. It reassures us that no matter which path we take, God is there to guide us and provide wisdom, ensuring we stay on the right course. In deciding about God's day of worship, several important questions need to be answered. Who changed the Sabbath from Saturday, the 7th day of the week, to Sunday, the first day of the week? Did the Bible authorize such a change? If so, did God, Christ, or perhaps the apostles make the change? Is there any pronouncement from God that changes the Sabbath from the 7th to the first day of the week? Most Christians accept the 10 Commandments given by God at Sinai as a valid guide to live by. Moses reminded Israel, "These words the Lord spoke to all your assembly in the mountain from the midst of the fire, the cloud, and the thick darkness with a loud voice." And he added no more. And he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me. The 10 Commandments are the only message God has ever personally written out for the human race. They are so important that he wrote them on stone with his own finger, Exodus 31:18. In the 4th commandment, God instructs us, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day." When God created our world, He set apart the 7th day as the Sabbath of the Lord by 3 divine acts. Genesis 2:1-3. God rested on the 7th day from all His work, blessed the 7th day, sanctified it. Again, at Sinai, when He gave the 10 Commandments, God reiterated these same truths. He also made it clear that no human being should revise or edit the instruction from His holy lips. "You shall not add to the word which I command you, nor take from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you." Deuteronomy 4:2. God Himself pledges not to alter His commands. "My covenant I will not break, nor alter the word that has gone out of my lips." Psalm 89:34. The Bible is clear that God did not change the Sabbath from the 7th to the first day of the week. According to Jesus, the 10 Commandments and all the moral principles in the Old Testament scriptures are not subject to change. They are to continue He is our example in Sabbath keeping. He, Jesus, came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, Luke 4:16. Looking to the future, Jesus wanted his disciples to continue experiencing the joys of true Sabbath keeping. He instructed them to pray that during the siege they would not have to flee from Jerusalem on the Sabbath. Pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath, Matthew 24:20. Jesus was speaking of the destruction of Jerusalem, an event that took place in AD 70, nearly 40 years after his resurrection. Jesus did not change the Sabbath commandment, nor any of the other commandments. In fact, he instructed the rich young ruler to obey the 10 Commandments, Matthew 19:16, 22, NIV 16. Just then, a man came up to Jesus and asked, "Teacher, what good thing must I do to get eternal life?" 17. "Why do you ask me about what is good?" Jesus replied. "There is only one who is good. If you want to enter life, keep the commandments." 18. "Which ones?" he inquired. Jesus replied, "You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not give false testimony. 19. Honor your father and mother, and love your neighbor as yourself." 20. "All these I have kept," the young man said. "What do I still lack?" 21. Jesus answered, "If you want to be perfect, go, sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me." 22. When the young man heard this, he went away sad because he had great wealth. This passage recounts a conversation between Jesus and a wealthy young man who wants to know what he must do to gain eternal life. Jesus emphasizes the importance of keeping the commandments and ultimately challenges the young man to sell his possessions and give to the poor, highlighting the difficulty of letting go of material wealth to fully follow him. It is clear from Jesus' teaching and example that we still need the Sabbath for rest, relaxation, and spending time with God. James, the first leader of the early Christian church, wrote concerning the 10 Commandments. "For whoever shall keep the whole law and yet stumble in one point, he is guilty of all. For he who said, 'Do not commit adultery,' also said, 'Do not murder.'" These verses emphasize the importance of observing all aspects of the law. James points out that breaking even one part of the law makes a person guilty of breaking the entire law. This underscores the idea that all commandments are interconnected and that true obedience involves adherence to the entire moral code. Luke, a physician and evangelist in the early church, reports, "On the Sabbath day, we went out of the city to the riverside, where prayer was customarily made, and we sat down and spoke to the women who met there." Acts 16:13. This verse describes a moment during Paul's missionary journey where he and his companions seek a place of prayer on the Sabbath. They find a group of women gathered by the river and begin to share their message with them. This event marks the beginning of the conversion of Lydia, an important figure in the early Christian church. Lydia is a significant figure in the early Christian church. According to Acts 16:13-15, she was a woman from the city of Thyatira who dealt in purple cloth. As a result, Lydia and the members of her household were baptized, and she invited Paul and his companions to stay at her house. Lydia's conversion is notable because she became one of the first recorded converts to Christianity in Europe and played a key role in establishing the Christian community in Philippi. The apostle to the Gentiles, who wrote much of the New Testament, affirms, "For he, God, has spoken in a certain place of the seventh day in this way, and God rested on the seventh day from all his work." several Sabbaths observed by the apostles after the resurrection of Jesus, demonstrating their continued practice of meeting and preaching on these holy days. While the exact number of Sabbaths mentioned specifically in Acts is not always agreed upon, the book illustrates the apostles' dedication to both teaching and adhering to Jewish traditions while spreading the message of Christianity. Some of the notable mentions include Acts 1:12-14. The apostles gather together after Jesus' ascension. Acts 13:14-15. Paul and Barnabas attend synagogue service in Antioch on the Sabbath. Acts 13:42-44. Gentiles request Paul to speak on the next Sabbath, and nearly the whole city gathers to hear him. Acts 16:13. Paul and his companions go to a place of prayer by the river on the Sabbath in Philippi. Acts 17:2. Paul, as his custom was, goes into the synagogue and reasons with the Jews for 3 Sabbaths in Thessalonica. Acts 17:2. Paul, as his custom was, goes into the synagogue and reasons with the Jews for 3 Sabbaths in Thessalonica. Acts 17:2. Paul, as his custom was, goes into the synagogue and reasons with the Jews for 3 Sabbaths in Thessalonica. Acts 18:4. Paul reasons in the synagogue every Sabbath in Corinth, trying to persuade Jews and Greeks. Acts 20:7. On the first day of the week, which is after the Sabbath, the disciples gather to break bread, indicating a continued observation of Sabbath customs. These passages highlight that the apostles continued to observe the Sabbath, using it as an opportunity to teach and spread their message.